Thank you. So as Damien was saying, the idea is that that I use when I consult with companies. Oops, and I have to hold on, please. Hold on. Thank you. Is that the way we perceive the world, the way we see the world, influences the decisions that we make and the choices that we make. That's very visible in organizational cultures. Right now I'm working with a company called Fusion, who actually created an algorithm. It takes something between a picture, a photograph, and a video. So it's a 3D image, and they wanted to market their product in different countries. So we were sitting down and talking about what it means, for example, what a selfie means in Colombia, or Brazil, or Romania, or Germany, or United States. And how do people relate to images in different cultures? And one of the things that I did, I just came back from Colombia, where I met with chefs and trying to promote the app to restaurants. And they were saying that it's very important for them to see, for example, each ingredient, how is assembled on the plate. And that's something that I haven't found out that it was interesting for any other country that we have promoted the Fuse. So how is that reflected? Well, yeah, I think that how is culture and why is culture important, right? So what is culture in general? What is the definition? We've been talking all day, and there were a few definitions, but for me, culture is a collection of behaviors, values, beliefs, symbols that are shared by a group of people. So the fact that we're all in this conference, I assume one of a common value is that we think about how important culture is for us or for the places that we work in. And the deal is that it's very important to care about culture, because there is no way to escape it. Why? Because the moment you try to escape culture, you actually become part of the culture of those who are trying to escape culture. So whatever we do, there is no way to escape it. Now, culture is also related to the idea of leadership. Whether you are an employee or at the C-level, you are influenced by a culture, and chances are, if you were there from the very beginning, that you actually have participated in creating that type of culture. And we're going to go and see later on different types of different values that are influencing a culture. It's not only me who says that. Deloitte did in 2014 this research in which they found out that the 21st century workforce, which is probably the millennials, is global, highly connected, technology savvy, and demanding. And just simply replacing the people that you think are not a good fit. It's good sometimes, but it's important to try and optimize or fluidify the relationships within your company. And in 2015, actually, they found out that not only that leadership was important, culture and engagement, but there are the gap between this importance and the ability to fulfill it is actually widening. So what is the difference between a leader and a global leader? Anybody can tell me what could global leadership mean? It's just another term. Why a leader is important, but then what is a global leader? Somebody who understands cultural differences. And why would that be important? Okay, and because globalization is actually getting us closer in a way that we can't ignore that anymore, right? If you look at the Silicon Valley, we have people from about 135 cultures, and also we want to promote our products and services to different countries. And while there are things that unite us as human beings, and I think that people like Steve Jobs managed to figure that out, how to embody those common human values in one product, often we need to adapt those values, at least at the beginning, and to figure out how are they different from country to country. So in that case, what is important to create within a culture is the relationship. And I'm glad that Jessica was talking about meaning, because it's not only about having a relationship with somebody, but it's also important to have a meaningful relationship. And this is what creates a strong culture. And this is why a global leader has to take into account what is the cultural connotation of meaning, because sometimes meaning, what is meaningful for what I call a being culture versus a doing culture, right? There are cultures who are working in order to have fun, and there are cultures who are actually working to earn more and more money. So the satisfaction is not what they're doing after they leave work. The definition of a global leader will be then how to communicate and interact in an optimal way across cultures. So that could be a national culture, it could be an organizational culture, or generational. What makes us comfortable in a presence of a global leader or of any other person is when they let us be ourselves, while at the same time give us the chance to adjust to whatever changes we need to make. And that's why I call culture, the software is not me actually, is a guy called Hofstede who called culture software of the mind. And he said that how he was working on how to optimize. If you think that each person has their own values, their own beliefs, and their own way of interacting, then if that's one type of software, how do you optimize the communication between people that are part of a culture? And these are the 4 pillars of what is called the cultural intelligence: drive, knowledge, strategy, and action. And they are based on the idea that intelligence is not of one type. It is actually, some people are more socially intelligent, some people more emotionally intelligent, some people are better with practical things, but one of the types of intelligence is the cultural intelligence. And that means the ability to interact optimally across cultures. All right. So can you please look at, you have on the right side these proverbs, on a left side these proverbs, and on the right side these countries. Can you match one with the other? Maybe take a couple of minutes and then to figure out which one is which. Forget about this one. I don't know how I got here. Has no meaning. So who wants to give it a try? One E. Agree, disagree? Okay. 5. You saw my papers? Did you sneak in? Because you were sitting nearby. Did you see my papers? Yeah. So far is right. 5C. If you want to.
I think I'm pretty much done. Let's see. 2A. India.
Who said 2D? Are you from Germany? No, from Austria. Okay, you're right, ma'am. You're very right.
That's good, actually, yes.
It's 2D. What else is left? 3.
4B.
3A, yes. 3A.
3A.
And
Okay.
4B,
B.
right? So when you look at all these proverbs, right? What does that mean? I'm sorry I asked so many questions. I actually designed this as a workshop, and I had this fantasy that we're gonna do continuums and move around and do all sorts of stuff. So I'm trying to adapt to a more to a less interactive. So what do you think that these type of statements or proverbs say about each countries? Like any idea, like any comments that you have in the way, like why the squeaky wheel gets the grease? Why is that so American? What does that mean? Why did you guess that? Because what?
Just because I've heard it.
Oh, I see. It's a what? Fixing. Oh, fix it. Okay. But Germany, they fix things even better.
We're a country based on protest.
So,
Our country was founded based on protesting. So you protest, you get attention, you make change.
getting attention to make change, right? So it's not only about fixing, you're right, but you need to squeak in order to get what you need, right? If you don't, you're not going to get what you need. So that's why it's a little bit, sometimes in Silicon Valley, it's a lot of agitation because everybody's squeaking, right? They want the grease, right? And then it's that much grease, so therefore we're all squeaking startups for funds. Speaking of that, for example, employment, I was talking with a Dutch company who was hiring in Netherlands, and there was an American person among the other candidates, and he was talking so much about himself, how good he's this at this. They almost kicked him out. And the idea is that, you know, in Netherlands, usually you don't brag that much about yourself, right? Being a little bit modest and showing the results later on is more important than focusing on, than just kind of talking about how good you are from the very beginning in these flamboyant terms. So there was a lot of squeaky stuff there, you know, but there was no need for it in that case. And how about this one? When head is present, tail should not wag. Why is this Indian? Why is this so? I promise this is the last question I ask. What does that mean that when head is present? The what? The caste system. So the hierarchy, right? Yeah. Yeah. So the idea is that it turns out that average social group in India, hierarchy is very important. Respecting the elderly, the leaders, is very important. So where I wanted to get with this is that when I work with multicultural teams, or when I'm trying to figure out what is the best way of marketing a product, a service, or actually hiring people within a certain culture, there are certain values that I call culture metrics that I assess. And there is a database that tells you what is the average per each culture of these values, but then you have to individually do what I call a self-assessment. It's not an evaluation, it's not about being good or bad, but it's about figuring out how you fit and where you fit, or how your product fits or not. And one of the values that I use, that I measure, is what is called individualism versus communitarianism, right? How much do I care about do I have, or I believe I should promote myself and care about my immediate needs versus the community or the group needs? And again, this is not a pejorative way of thinking, oh, you're an individualist, you care only about yourself. These are values that are imprinted as we grow up, usually between 0 and about 7, 8 years old, when we don't have an intellectual ability. We don't process things in a cognitive way. We process things in an emotional way. So we associate every experience with an emotion, and that gets branded as a value, right? It happens also that we reject the certain values of that culture, and that's why we're all different. We're not all average. But it does help to have an idea about how a culture values independence and achievement versus community and reaching consensus. The other value is what I call perception of power and hierarchy. And that's related to the fact that, for example, in many people, maybe you know that if you worked with Chinese companies or Indian companies, Israeli companies, Latin American even, Eastern European, it is not very useful to challenge your boss in a direct way, the same way you do in the United States. Index for what is called power distance in the United States is about 35 to 40, while in the countries that I mentioned before is about 95. So that means that when you perceive that someone is superior to you in one way or another, either is older or is in a higher function, you do not necessarily challenge them directly. And many people, when they open branches like in Japan or China, they have their employees saying, you know, they can't say no, right? Go and do this. And they have no clue how to do it. Yes, but they don't do it. Why? Because they can't tell you that I don't know how to do it. It's not acceptable. Right? What is the exchange for this? There is a certain comfort in being protected by a higher power, by a higher hierarchy, right? So what do people think that they should give in exchange? That is loyalty, right? So I'm loyal to you as long as you protect me. Right? Or you protect me and therefore I'm loyal to you. It's very important to notice, and I invite you to look, if you work in the multicultural team, if that's reflected or not. I mean, of course, companies like Google or Facebook that have a very strong organizational culture, they tend to override individual cultural values. But if you get to talk to, in a multicultural team, you're going to see that there are differences that people don't necessarily express them. And if the company culture is very strong, then they align by that. I remember I was working with a multicultural team in a relatively big company, and there were a Swedish guy, there were 2 Russians, 1 Romanian, and 1 guy from New York, who was the manager, right? And they were all developers, and at some point the things were not working. They didn't want to work together anymore. They were not sharing their pieces of code. They were not. So the manager thought, like, let's do games day. That he came with this idea that one day of the month, aside from the other, what the company was doing, we're going to do games day in which we're going to bond with each other. And I had a friend, I'm Romanian of origin, so I had the Romanian who was working there came to me like, can you believe this idiot? Games day? Like, this is what I need? How do I bond to, what am I, a child? And I would understand very well what he meant. Because for Eastern Europeans, I would dare to generalize, you don't necessarily bond while playing games, right? It's considered somehow childish. And again, not everybody's the same, especially if you live abroad for a while. But that was a way in which that person, that manager, thought he could bring people together. And it turns out that, in fact, the Swedish guy was angry that the Russians were always late. The Romanians, I don't know why the Swedish was doing. So these were very subtle things, very little cultural things that they needed to be fixed in terms of what do they stand, what is everybody's values. And I think I'm kind of dumb. These are the 4 cultural intelligence capabilities: drive, knowledge, and strategy and action. And they have, when I measure them, they have some sort of sub-values. And then this is what I actually meant when I was talking about individuality versus togetherness, power and hierarchy. And the other one that I didn't get to talk is the attitude towards uncertainty. How do we react when we are faced with the unknown? That's there are very interesting cultural differences. And that was pretty much it. Thank you. Two minutes for questions? 3, 5, or 8 minutes? Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I just thought that was 10, that was all. Any questions? I will give you, I asked too many, right? You just made us to just respond to things, and I can't. I don't know. Once you just cross the line, you're gone. You're out. To which one? Oh, and this one, I like this one, what Ev Williams said. The culture is not something that brings value to other people, is likely to drive self-serving and manipulating behavior. This one? This one. So these are sub-dimensions. The idea is that drive or motivation is how are people motivated, let's say in your company? How are people motivated in one culture or another? Is it an internal locus of control or external, right? We tend to educate, with a meager exception of Northern Europe, and even there, we tend to educate our children and our employees with the carrot and the stick, basically. You can call it now timeout, but it's still punishment, right? You react, you do this, or you're punished. You do this, you're rewarded, right? And the more we do this, the more happens what Howard Zinn was saying, that the greatest atrocities of the world have happened not because of people not being submissive, but because of too much obedience. And that were the Holocaust and the Second World War. So if we teach our employees to be obedient, of course or children for that matter, of course, we don't have to bother with that too much, right? They just execute, they react, right? But we're better off just, I don't know, training dogs or something, right? To just, you do like this and then I'll give you a treat, and you don't do like this and I'll just kind of give you a punishment. So it's very difficult indeed to take care of a culture where the employees are internally motivated, because then they think about things and they come up with their own ideas. But this is what I believe actually meaning is, and a meaningful culture is. I ended up talking instead of answering questions. All right. Thank you so much.